Well, if you saw my last video, you will recall that on my big countermarch floor loom, I was doing a full width warp for the very first time, and I was doing it with the rattle, so not with a sectional beam. And it ended up really quite messy. And you saw me in the last video sort of finger combing through and just trying to get that warp organized on the back beam. And I was encouraging all of you to continue with messy warps because you can really make something out of it. And here's the proof, because I'm now at the threading stage, which is absolutely wonderful. This cloth is going to be just basically yardage for me to experiment making a couple of skirts out of and see how I go with that. And I was really agonizing over whether to do thread up for plain weave or thread up for a twill, because I have an idea of joining panels for the skirt. And so if I had a very definite pattern, then that might not work for joining the panels, because then I'd have to try and join the pattern, and that could be really difficult. And so I decided to have a little compromise and do a straight draw threading on 4 shafts. And so that's a 4-3-2-1 threading. And that way, if I start weaving the twill and then I decide that I want some plain weave, then I can easily do the plain weave for that. So that's going to work out just fine. I also wanted to update you on my purchase of the Bissell Crosswave wet dry vacuum cleaner, because I've mentioned this in past videos as well and asked for advice, and some of you recommended this machine, and I'm really glad that you did. I finally decided to purchase it and I have been super happy with it, and I think my floors have never been so clean. It's really easy to use. So this is only for hard floors. Here I'm using it on the kitchen floor, which it looks like a wooden floor, but it's actually like a fake wooden floor. It's floating floorboards. And then I also use it on the rest of most of the rest of our house, which is like a lino floating floorboards. And it's been absolutely great on both of those surfaces. So here's the lino. The only real drawback of this machine that I didn't realize before I bought it is how much I would have to clean it afterwards, because it picks up such a lot of stuff, vacuums and mops at the same time, and then you end up with all the filth inside the machine. And I actually didn't realize how much pet hair we have as well. If I did realize, I may have been better to go with the pet machine, but I opted for this one. And so yeah, that's the only real drawback. Otherwise, I'm extremely happy with it. I put in a little bit of time at the knitting machine recently. My focus at the moment is on Fair Isle, because that is really my favorite knitting technique. And I also just received the Nick Corrigan Fair Isle book, which is really great and really inspiring. A lovely little book, I really recommend it. But what I'm trying to do is still get down the real basics, like finding a cast on and cast off that I like and that I find easy enough to do, because I do have a really fine gauge machine and I'm a bit challenged by that, because it's hard to see when you're having to do wrapping needles manually and that kind of thing. But what I'm doing right here is I'm experimenting a little bit with my Fair Isle by changing the colors in the middle of the punch card. So you can see the punch card sticking up there. I haven't got it on a roll. You can make it roll continuously, but I'm changing punch cards as I go as well, just to further experiment. So I'm playing around with the colors, I'm playing around with the tension, and then I'm playing around with changing the punch cards just, you know, whenever I feel like it. And I feel like that's really helping me to get to know the machine, because as you can see here, I'm threading the yarn that I want, and then I'm taking it out in another part and swapping it over, and doing those sort of actions repetitively really helps you to get to know whatever equipment you are using. One of the difficulties I had with this sample was, and this kind of surprised me because I'm really careful with putting on the claw weights. You can see the claw weights dangling underneath, and that's what helps pull the piece down so that it's not getting caught up underneath the machine on the needles. But that ended up happening in a couple of spots anyway. I'm not sure why. And this is one of my biggest frustrations with the knitting machine, is often when something goes wrong, I don't have enough knowledge to know why, like what actually happened there. How do I backtrack from that mistake and how do I prevent it in the future? So these are all things, of course, that I've learned in weaving, but I haven't had enough time at the knitting machine to really learn these things. So here I am changing colours again. Each time you change colours, you have to thread them up through the tensioning device and make sure that they're in the right spot for knitting with. And then with this Fair Isle punch card, you can knit 2 colours at once, which is really awesome. You don't have to swap the colours over for every row or whatever. Another of my aims with practicing this Fair Isle at the moment is to make my own designs. So I've got my own blank punch cards and I've got the special puncher that is required to punch out the designs. And so now I've read through Nick's book once and I'm reading through it again. It does go into design quite a bit and it's really helpful because it explains to you things like, like how you need to put your color placement in a design, things like the repetition of the design to have it meet up accurately, and all those little things that I probably on my own wouldn't really think of. I'd just go, oh, this looks like a great design, I'm going to punch it. But there's a bit more to it than that. I guess it's kind of, if you compare it to weaving, it's like doing the calculations in weaving before you actually start so that you can make sure that you have somewhat of a measured result. So there you can see I'm checking the weights, and still I got those stitches jumbled up underneath just on a couple of sections. But this is one reason why I haven't really moved very far beyond sampling on the knitting machine yet, because I do keep encountering these errors. And I just think, oh, if I was weaving, if I was knitting a larger piece and an error occurred that I didn't know how to fix, it'd just be kind of heartbreaking. Here I'm putting in another punch card. So these are the punch cards that came with the machine. And if you have a punch card machine, you should get a bunch of punch cards with it, or you can buy them online already punched out. But yeah, to be able to do your own designs, I think would be really fun. And that's something that is really inspiring about Nick's book. I'm going to link to that book down below if you're interested in having a look at it. So here you can see I'm fiddling going, oh man, I got stitches caught underneath and I didn't know what to do, so I'm just going to cut them, which is really the wrong thing to do, but that was all I knew how to do to kind of be able to keep going because the knitting was kind of stuck underneath the machine. So obviously you can't just cut your knitting, but for a sample where I don't know what else to do, that's how I got through it. So there are lots more things that I need to learn, especially on fixing mistakes. You'll notice that with each pass of the carriage, I'm putting a needle out on the other end like that. And that is supposed to help with the edges, to get your edges a little bit neater. Here's the sample that I ended up with. I actually really like these little triangles. They look like mountains with peaks to me. And you can see how I just randomly kind of swapped colors. You can also very much plan for colors in Fair Isle, and that's something that the book goes through as well. But I think this is a really cute little sample. And I'm always interested in Fair Isle to see which designs have the shortest floats, because I find short floats on the back of the work very desirable over long floats. Also from a previous video, our decking project is finally finished. We had some false starts with it because we were going to use some stain that we found that the previous owners had left in a shed here. So we thought, brilliant, that's going to be nice and cheap. But we very quickly ran out of that stain and needed to buy another tin. We didn't realize how very, very thirsty this wood would be. And then I had ordered the bench seat some time ago and it didn't arrive. and I contacted the company and they said they'd send another one out. So finally they sent another one out, and then on the same day 2 bench seats arrived, and then I had to arrange for one of them to be sent back. So it was a bit of a kerfuffle, but we got there in the end, and my husband did a great job of sanding off and staining this deck. We also put some solar lights around the bottom, and they shine nicely on the dam water at night. And it looks really, really nice. I'm very happy with this project. We did go quite a bit over budget. I didn't want to spend as much as we ended up spending, but I'm still happy that we did it. So to give a cost breakdown, the stain that we used was $70. This is all Australian dollars. The bench seat was 160 and the lights were 20. So this project cost a total of 250 Australian dollars.